Hi, this is Natural Health for All Ages. I'm Dr. Jean Wagner, naturopath, which is a branch of medicine that looks to help people increase their health with using natural products. Our topic today is bone health, and today I have a guest speaker, Cassey Mieslik from Hilltop Barn in Columbiaville. She has a facility there, a farm that she does, herb walks, she does craft workshops, she also does community education talks, as well if people have a group and they want to have a speaker on herbs or natural health. She does that as well. So I'm just going to have, do you want to add anything about what you
No,
do?
Jean covered it. I am out in Columbiaville, in a very rural area. I have mowed paths that we take our walks on. And if you have a group that wants to come out there, you can welcome to bring your group out. And otherwise, I will go to your group too to do a presentation on herbs.
Which I could say I've been on an herb walk before, and I've been to a craft workshop, and they were both excellent. I really, and the place, the farm is just fabulous. It's just so, it's out there in the country, and it's very, soothing. So anyways, it's near Halloween, so here's my little skeleton, and we're talking about, health in your bones. Like, your bones are living. It's like, some people think that, bones are, more just, hard things like a tabletop, but they're actually living tissue. Here's just like a, a dog bone treat for, I brought in for some, visual purposes, but, bones themselves are very hard. They're very sturdy. They're meant to be like our structure to hold us up. But they are living. The bone is not dead. There's certain cells in your bone that create new bone, and there's certain cells in your bone that destroy old bone. And so it's kind of like a flux. Your bones are always changing over to maintain health. And one of the problems, with bone health per se is that I just want to demonstrate too is that, bones are not just calcium. A lot of times people say, oh, you need your calcium, you need your calcium, you need your calcium. But like chalk, is pure calcium, and how chalk is very brittle. So bones themselves are not just calcium. You need a lot of components to make bone. You need the calcium, yes, but you also need all the trace minerals that work with the calcium. You need the collagen that binds them together. The protein actually gives the bones flexibility so they don't break like the chalk. And a lot of the problems, a lot of people, if they have osteoporosis, they're going to look for some type of medication. But the medication, I would say all the medication I know of for the osteoporosis, what it does is prevents the cells that tear down old bone from working as well. So you get a denser bone because all your old bone is sticking around. So it's making your bones denser, but it doesn't mean that's a healthy bone because it is old bone. It's not the fresh bone that your bone needs to maintain health and flexibility.
It's brittle.
Right, it's brittle. So even though, and there's a lot of side effects to those medications as well. You can get, decay of the jawbone. You can get, other health problems from those medications as well. So, some people may need them, but I would say it's worth somebody's, time to, look into some nutrition and other ways that you can actually help improve your health, help your body improve it itself instead of relying on a medication only. As diets, again, is important because, again, the bone needs those minerals, trace minerals, not just, the bulk ones that they add in, usually like calcium or some of the bulk vitamins like B vitamins, but a lot of those trace ones that are in foods that are, grown on good soil, which sometimes nowadays the soil isn't that good, so you don't even have that. But I was going to show an easy recipe, just a way to get nutrition out, because there's a lot of different substances as bone, and so bone has everything that bone needs.
Yeah.
So a good way to eat that, you're not going to gnaw on a bone, you can give this to a dog, but a really easy way is just to take, your bone, put it in your saucepan, and you're trying to get all those minerals to dissolve out. Well, one of the ways is to get something a little bit acidic. So you want a little bit of vinegar. So you take a little bit of vinegar, pour it in your soup pot with the water, fill it up above the bone, and you just want to simmer that. You can simmer it for 12 hours, 24 hours. You can even use your crock pot put it on low, because eventually those minerals are going to soften up and dissolve into the water. And then when you can either eat it as soup, you can use it for gravies. You can, if you have children that don't like to eat nutritious food, you can use it as the liquid in like their macaroni and cheese, or anything that you can
sneak it in there.
Sneak it in there, right? Exactly.
It's true.
So that's an easy way to get there. But since Cassey's a herbalist and she has wonderful information about herbs, we're going to talk a lot about what you can get. And herbs are food; they're very nutritious plants, and they have a lot of different minerals. Your green plants, besides like your fruits, have more vitamins. But your plants and your vegetables generally have more minerals out of the soil.
Trace minerals.
And your trace minerals, which are so important.
Which are balance the whole plant. It causes a balance in your body too. You can't isolate things.
Right.
You really can't. And Jean had mentioned overall diet, and we're talking about bone health. So when I'm asked questions about it, my first thing is your overall diet is probably one of the most important things. If you eat fast food all the time, if you eat a lot of frozen things, if you unfortunately eat out in restaurants a lot, you have no control over the food.
Right. You don't know what they're using for ingredients.
You have no idea. And as much as some people don't want to hear it, you really need to get some cooking skills and make at least a couple meals at home every day. Mm-hmm. It does help because you've got more control over what you're eating. The other thing about bone health is movement. If you don't move and put weight-bearing weight on your structure, it's going to soften up. And that's a problem.
Right, because your body's smart.
Right.
If you're not going to use it, it's not going to put a lot of energy there.
That's right. So it's not going to continue to build bone.
So if there's stress on an area of the bone,
right,
that's what makes those
exercise
new bone cells that make the new bone. It makes them make more bone.
Just taking a weight and going like this stretches those muscles and tendons across your bone. That's going to make your arm bone stronger besides your muscles.
They've even shown that people at 90 years old, they
you
did a
can
test.
Yes.
You can increase your bone density just by lifting simple weights.
If you have problems with your knees, and I do because I ran for a long time when I was a younger woman, I found the nicest bike trail by us. And I bike, and usually it's about 10 miles a day. Well, that's a lot of bone muscly rubbing on
your muscles are pulling on your bone.
They're pulling. So it's good for my legs, good for my hips.
Right.
So that right at the beginning, or cross-country skiing, snowshoeing in the winter. If you like downhill skiing, that scares the heck out of me, so I don't do that.
That might be bad for your bones.
Well, no, not really. But if you're young, they still bounce well. But some of the there are a lot of herbs that you can use specifically, one of which is oat straw. And Jean had talked about the use of oats earlier. Oat straw is basically the grassy part of the oats. Oat straw, stinging nettle, and horsetail combined make a really nice calcium tea. You can either, well, oat straw would be kind of hard. Horsetail and nettle you can find in the wild.
Which this is nettle.
Yeah, oh yeah.
You just want to be careful. You use like leather gloves, not just regular gloves, because they have little hairs on them that will sting you, and it can get through like a woven, like a glove.
Or garden gloves that have the rubber on it.
Right.
That will help. I've gathered nettle for years. I don't use gloves. I don't recommend you don't, but because I'm used to picking it. I know what part to pick and how to pick it without getting myself. It doesn't mean I never, have that.
But once it's dry, it doesn't sting you anymore, so it is safe to handle. It's just that initial picking it.
Right.
That's the
this little picky part right here has an oil in it, and it gets into your skin, and it's itchy and it burns.
It makes little bumps.
Yeah.
So, but it's very nutritious. Yes,
as
well, and it grows around here.
It has iron in it, calcium, magnesium, magnesium. Actually, nettle is a really, really good herb overall for women, period. It is. But you can make a nice calcium tea by combining the oat straw, the nettle, and the horsetail. Probably, I think I wrote, I actually don't measure, but for this I measured. You want to use about 1/4 water per an ounce or 2 tablespoons of the combined tea. Pour your boiling water over it, let it steep for 30 to 60 minutes covered. A pan like what Jean has here would be fine to make it in. And then drink 3 to 4 cups a day. And if the taste is strong at first, try honey in it. A nice honey that you get from a grower, not from the grocery store, to sweeten it a little bit.
And again, it's like you don't have to necessarily go out and pick these yourself. If you can, that's wonderful, and it helps you to see where the herbs grow and everything. But if you want to, they're all in the health food store. And again, if you buy them loose, a lot of times you're not going to find that exact mixture. If you want to make it yourself,
you'll never find that mixture. Yeah.
Buy the separate herbs. You can steep them in the pot or in the teapot. And again, it's like pour it out through a sieve or something that will catch the loose leaves so it doesn't get in your cup. It's not going to hurt you if you do swallow the parts, but if you don't want to drink like the loose leaves, then just strain it.
Yeah, you don't want your teeth straining it. No.
Right, or just use one of those little sieves that you just grab your mixture and then put it in the hot water and let it sit there, to get the good things out of that tea.
That particular tea, you really should steep for at least 30 minutes. You need to extract all of those minerals and not vitamins so much, but minerals and trace minerals out of those herbs. And the other thing too is if you're going to keep that all day, you could put it on a low simmer. And Jean had mentioned a crock pot before. You could actually put that in a crock pot if you have a small one and keep it going all day long.
Do you want to come home and you have your hot tea ready for you in the winter?
I don't know if
that'd
it'd
be
be
nice.
any good ice, but you never know.
Right.
Yeah. And Jean had talked about the bone broth. I have a soup recipe that's a calcium soup recipe too, and it's made with fish bones. Now,
right, because any type of bones
any
work.
type of bone, right. And the fish bone, well, I'm trying to think. Most of the time, when you're getting fish from the grocery store, there aren't any bones in it. They're all
go to
fillets.
a fish market.
Yeah, go to a fish market, or if you're lucky and you have a husband that, or
Encourage him to
family
go
member
fishing.
that fishes the nice little fish out of the lakes, they come home with all the bones. Take those bones. Yeah.
Also, if you go to Asian food markets,
Mhm.
because we go to one, my husband's Korean, so we always go to the Asian food market for a lot of stuff.
They
always have the whole fish.
Whole fish.
They're frozen. Some of them are fresh. You can really smell down that aisle. But and there's one in Rochester. There's usually one that's not too far away. But you can actually get like the whole fish.
So you've got some fish bones to start with. To add maybe a half a cup of cabbage, dandelion greens, stinging nettle. We're back to the nettle. Some parsley, and purslane. And season it to taste, salt and pepper to taste. You can use this as a drink. You can also use it as a base for other soups. You can use it just as a soup. Once it's done, basically all you're going to do is cook it like a soup. If you want to put that in your crock pot, that's a good idea, because that could be an all-day slow thing. There's a lot of calcium in this combination of herbs plus the bones. It's a good way to get calcium in your diet.
Right, and if you like fish, it's a very tasty soup. If you don't like fish, you can use the beef bones instead.
Or try the calcium tea.
Right.
Exactly. There are other things too, even though these aren't necessarily herbs, but avocados and beans. That's helpful. Horsetail is.
Which horsetail grows around here quite a bit.
Horsetail, though, does have a little check mark with it. It's something that you should not take a lot of. You're going to use it sparingly, and I wouldn't recommend just using it by itself. It's not that it's poisonous, but you can overdo it.
There's a lot of silica in it too, so it's good for your
fingernails
and your hair.
Yep. I make an ointment sometimes out of burdock. We had burdock in another session.
Right.
The little burrs, when they're green, you can soak those in extra virgin first cold pressed olive oil and then make it into a salve. And it's really good for your cuticles and your
you put
nails.
the horsetail in there as well? Or?
You can put the horsetail in there too.
Okay, good.
Yeah. There are other uses besides tea, but...
And for her recipe, for her tea and for her soup, I know it's, we're just going through that quickly, but we'll have a contact information later for Cassey. So if you want to contact her and get a specific recipe, then we'll have her email address as well for that.
Yep. And you were going to talk about Swiss chard.
Right, Swiss chard. I mean, I picked this morning, and this is like late October, so almost November, and mine is growing by my deck, and it's growing great.
Yeah.
And again, like you can, Swiss chard, like anything that has that nice red color, is known as like a bone builder. It's like, spinach. It's kind of like similar to the spinach family, but the Swiss chard itself has a lot of vitamin K, and that's very important in making sure that your calcium is utilized correctly. If you just take in a bunch of calcium, it might go into like bone spurs, it might go into hardening of the arteries, it might not be, used by the body in a correct way. What you need is things that help to absorb the calcium, help to put it into bone, and vitamin K is very important. It's known to help put the calcium where it's needed, into the bone. And Swiss chard is actually one of the few plants that you can get vitamin K from. You also get vitamin K a lot from your healthy gut bacteria. So if you've taken a lot of antibiotics, if you always have like irritable bowel syndrome, colitis, you might not actually be producing enough of your vitamin K to keep your bones healthy. So you can either take a supplement of good bacteria to get that your good bacteria growing, because they actually produce it and you absorb it, and that's very important. But you can also get it from this plant, which you can put it in salads, you can steam it, it's tasty, and again, it's like how long has it been lasting through the whole fall?
I use it in soups.
Right, exactly.
There are a lot of soups that I add greens to, and also in scrambled eggs.
Right.
And another thing too, when you were talking about restoring some of your gut flora, is fermented foods.
Right.
You can take any of cabbage, summer vegetables, and ferment them in your kitchen.
Right.
For just pennies. It's as simple as just putting them in jars and making sure you've got all the liquid in it and adding some salt. Or you could add organic whey to it.
Do you do any classes on fermented foods?
No, no one's ever asked me to.
Maybe you should. Because a lot of foods that are traditionally fermented and were really known as health builders in history, nowadays what they do is just put some vinegar on the vegetable with some salt, and you don't have the beneficial bacteria like pickles, sauerkraut, pickled beets. All those nowadays, when they're canned, they're just put in vinegar and they're not fermented naturally at all. So you don't get those beneficial bacteria. Or even if they are canned, then they're heated up so it kills all the good bacteria in there. So you really have to find someone that does it fresh. Again, like we go to the Korean market, so kimchi, which I don't like.
And you can find
too spicy.
But you can make your own kimchi, and you can buy some also that isn't so spicy.
You can just get pickled radish without the other spices in it, which my kids even like that, the slices of pickled radish.
Yeah.
And it's not that hot, so they like it.
Radishes?
Right.
Yeah. Where you can use, instead of those, you can use the regular radishes that you see in the store, the little red cherry things. You could use that in place of it.
Right.
And the other thing is sauerkraut, too. I know sauerkraut is a yes or a no thing, but sauerkraut is so simple. I used to make sauerkraut all the time. You put it in the jars, put the water and salt over it, and just let it sit for 6 weeks, and you have sauerkraut.
Right, and a lot of times people are like worried about what if you have bad bacteria growing in there, but if you add just a little bit of whey, like from yogurt brand that you like, it makes it so that you get that inoculation of the good bacteria, and that will help encourage it.
It triples your amount, or probably more than triples it, probably quadruples it over and over when you use whey. You get a lot more bacteria, good bacteria that you need.
Right. So if if people are having digestive problems, or they're looking for their bones, and they've had things that have destroyed their good bacteria over time, then that's actually a good way to do it. And it's tasty, and you can put it in your meals.
And you might have to start with small amounts.
Right, exactly. Don't overdo it, because you might
don't get a cereal bowl of it and start right in. I think you'll be unhappy.
Don't get a whole bowl of sauerkraut and then you have gastric problems afterwards. Right.
I when we were talking before also, I wanted to talk about I have books over here for a reason. One of which is because I'm a self-taught herbalist. I do have attended a lot of programs and educational programs from other more experienced herbalists. I also learned a lot from my grandmother, who was from the old country. But if I can do it, anybody can do it. There are a lot of books you can get that are inexpensive. These are some that are my favorite, one of which is Rosemary Gladstar, the Rodell. You can pick them up in the library. You can buy them on Amazon, however you go about it. Susan Weed is a good one. Dr. Duke is a good one. And if you're looking for wild things, you have to be careful what you're getting. This is a really good one. They're all good ones, and they're not that expensive. Go with an herbalist. There are herbalists all over. There's several in this. I think there's one right around in here, this area that is closer to this area.
Right, I think I'm going to have her on as a guest speaker in a couple weeks.
Oh, okay. But what I wanted to comment about was that Rosemary Gladstar had made a comment that herbs contain chemicals that have no apparent function in the life process of the plant, but those chemicals have a direct and positive impact on human beings. I really believe that herbs, whether they be wild or cultivated, are here for our use. And if you use the whole herb rather than, sometimes a standardized capsule has parts of that herb removed. Somebody decided that this part of the herb is what we should use.
Right, if they do like scientific studies, a lot of times
yes.
they want to standardize it to a certain chemical.
So they can control it. But the whole purpose of the herb is to have a balance, to balance your system, because we're very complex. And all of these suggestions here also can be taken as teas, which is a very nice, gentle way to introduce herbs as for medicinal uses in your body.
Right, and herbs will actually grow, in different areas of the country, depending on the weather conditions. So a lot of times, if you live in a damp, cold climate, a lot of the herbs there are useful for the colds and things that you get in a damp, cold climate. Whereas if you're down south and it's hot, there's different herbs that grow there. The constituents are different.
I had an herbalist. I took a program from an herbalist. She was a really interesting lady. She was an RN. And she said, if something's growing in abundance around you, there's a reason for that. You need it, and you'll need it for the season coming up.
Right. Which somebody had talked, when I was in school, they were like, there's a person with liver cancer or liver problem, and they're going out poisoning their dandelion in their yard.
Yeah, dandelion's great for your liver.
So we talked about the bone broth. So again, the exercise is going to make your bone. Oh no, this is actually red oak. It's not white oak. But an herb that generally is used a lot is white oak. It's very astringent, but it also has a lot of calcium in it, so it is good for the bones as well. I've never harvested a bark before. I don't know if you could use the smaller twigs or whether you have to use like the bigger limbs where the bark is a lot thicker, or the trunk of a tree.
Buy oak bark.
Right, you can buy oak bark, and you're not going to use, generally a lot of it, but it actually is known, to have a lot of calcium, and actually for teeth, like if people have gingivitis or loose teeth, a lot of times, like the white oak bark is known to help tighten your gums up so that your teeth are in there more solidly and help the teeth become healthier. And again, your teeth are your bones as well, so if it's helping the teeth, there's a good chance that it's going to be helping, the rest of your bones as well. Now, have you ever used comfrey?
Oh, yes. I use
comfrey
comfrey
there's that controversy about the comfrey in, scientific studies that theoretically there might be a problem.
I think they isolated some of the compounds in it, too, for the study.
Right.
Which is back to, if you isolate it, then you don't know if it's the whole thing.
Right, and any herbalist I know or natural doctor has said that they've never had a problem with comfrey causing any health problems, but it's specifically known for like if you break a bone.
Right.
It's nip bone, And it really helps to stimulate those cells that make new bones. So if you have a break, you can put a poultice on it, which is, you just get some of the leaves, you can grind them up, or you just wrap them around the, the foot, or, keep it there over time. And those constituents will actually help the area grow faster and repair the bone quicker.
I use comfrey in a first aid salve that I make.
Because what kind of first aid? Just like for bumps, bruises?
Bumps, bruises, sunburns. We use it on the dogs. We use it on my friends. I give it away, and I make a batch every year. But comfrey is so healing. I always warn people: make sure you get all of the dirt out of the cut before you put it on, because it is one component in that first aid salve.
Right.
And you don't want it to heal
heal
up with the dirt still in it. So clean it out real good before you put the set, because comfrey is a very fast healer.
Right, and they say make sure if you break a bone that you do not use it before the bone is set, because if the bone is out of place, it's going to start healing right away, and that they might have to re-break it in order to position it correctly. But once it's set and it's in a good position, then comfrey can make so that your healing time is much less. So that's another good herb. And it grows around this area too. It grows,
well, I've never found it in the wild, but my gosh, it grows in such abundance. I have to keep digging it out with a shovel and giving pieces to people.
Okay. So again, here's these were some general ideas for your bone health. Again, if you want to contact Cassey or me, we'll have our information at the end. But this was Natural Health for All Ages, and look for future episodes. Thank you.